Okay, welcome and good evening from the UAE to all of you, wherever you are. I am Shamim Chowdhury, one of the directors that run the accelerator program for Founder Institute in the UAE and GCC. Today, we get to meet some of the graduates of Founder Institute Accelerator Program from previous cohorts. What is special about today is that I get to be the one asking the questions to each of the graduate founders. But you'll be getting to hear some of the amazing founder stories. And the best bit is you will get the chance to ask your own questions directly to the founders during the networking event that happens straight at the end of this event. I believe now is probably a good time to do some quick introductions to the founders. So, Chinakia, how about you go ahead and give a little bit about yourself and also your startup, just to get people engaged.
Thank you so much for that, Shamim. Hi, I'm Chanakya. I was a graduate from the last Founders Institute cohort. Great program. I actually run an AI integrated software. We've built an AI integrated software for real estate management, and that's what our company is working on right now. That's a little bit about my company. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And how about you, Costa?
Yeah, can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Yeah, a bit about myself. Spent the last 11 years in the UAE. I'm here with the family, mechanical engineer as a background, work in the corporate world, and I graduated from the last cohort 2 with Chanakya, which was a great experience together. A bit about my company. What we are doing is called Smart Tender, and what we do, we analyze the tendering especially in the energy industry, but in every industry through artificial intelligence. So what you do, you put all the documents of the tender into the program, to the platform, and we analyze it for you. We give information about the tender, and this is pretty much what we do in a nutshell. Thank you.
Fantastic. There is a third founder that will be joining us shortly. But whilst we wait, I have a question for Costa now. Now, when people look at the journey of a startup, and particularly as a founder, they just see it in one dimensional. It's either up or down, or forward and backwards. But tell me more about your journey. Is it literally like that, or is it more to it?
It's much more to it. So it's I like this multidimensional that you put in the context, and it's a nice, in a way, it's a nice metaphor. What is actually is the life of a startup is an explosion. It's everything and nothing. It's going forward, backward. It's trying to understand how to move. It's a journey. It's a pretty sometimes it's really challenging journey. Sometimes it's really rewarding. Sometimes you have to put a bit more focus on what you're doing because you see things going out of track. So there is not one dimension at all. It's a really flavorful, if I can say that, journey with a lot of things happening, and again, it's something evolving. It's a kind of if I can use also this metaphor, it's a kind of a butterfly coming from his cocoon, and sometimes this butterfly don't want to go out, so you need to keep track of this transformation of the butterfly. So this is what I would say about how the life of a startup is. It's not at all multidimensional. It's not at all monodirectional. It's it's an explosion, and is transformational, both, and this is also something important to add, I think, both personally and professionally, because when you are in your startup, it's not only involving your professional life. Suddenly, as well, what is happening around you is changing. So it's a really interesting journey.
It's really, I really like the fact that you use this idea of a cocoon and becoming a butterfly, because a lot of the time when people use the word cocoon, they see it in a negative context. But at the same time, the way you're talking about it is that you need to be ready, right? And
Yeah.
when you're ready, that's the moment where you come out, right?
Yeah, you need to be ready, and also, this is also outside of the startup journey. It's not necessarily being in the cocoon. It's not necessarily as I see it as a negative things. It should be the choice of being in the cocoon, of being in the butterfly stage in a way. And this is as well the choice of the startup. Sometimes you need to step back and try to identify better how to move forward. Somehow you need to zoom out. So that cocoon phase can also be seen as a moment of reflection and seeing actually if what you're doing is bringing you in the right direction. Because again, going to the direction of your startup can go in many different ways, and you should be able to see where you want to go and somehow push the throttle where you want to be. So that cocoon is not necessarily seen as a negative thing. It's a moment of reflection, of zooming out and see where you want to expand.
So I have a question for Chanakya. Now, I would imagine with your idea, it's all about taking multiple perspectives of the same problem, right? From different angles, from different user perspectives. Tell me more about that, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our product, what we're trying to do is we're building a fully integrated real estate application. So what that means in a nutshell is that we're connecting property managers with residents, with also local businesses to become a neighborhood aggregator. So all of a sudden, what you find yourself is that you're not just servicing one target customer, but you have 3 different target customers, each of them with, separate needs and requirements. The thing is that you cannot work on all 3 things simultaneously at the same time, only because you want to make sure that you're giving the best you have to your customers at all times. So when it comes to looking at it from a broader picture, like Costa was saying, from and higher up angle, trying to service everyone, you have to understand, you have to first set yourself goals of how you anticipate that your product will evolve over, let's say, a 1-year lifespan, and then who you'd like to target first. Like you said, our customer base is so wide, but the biggest mistake we did while coming into the market was trying to service everyone simultaneously. And what we realized was we were creating a subpar product. Therefore, especially through Founders Institute, it gives you focus on who's your main customer right now. Once you've got that locked down, how can you then use the knowledge and resources to kind of get another customer on board, which is completely different from your existing customer. And those are some skills that, especially for me, from a background, I have, I was in banking prior to this. So I had no background in, understanding customers. I was just a numbers guy. And coming into it, as every other founder, we have like loads of ideas. We want to change the world. But what you have to understand is that you can't do it by just, a clap of hand or just snapping your fingers. It is a process that you go through by understanding each target audience and then building upon that. And those are some great things that you've learned from Founders Institute. I don't know if that answers the question you're looking for.
No, that was perfect. So now that you brought in the Founder Institute here, a lot of the people here that are joining us tonight, one of the questions that is going to be coming up to their mind is, are they ready for this program? Now, to really be able to engage that type of question and answer that type of question, tell us more about yourself before FI. What was this person of Chanakya, and what was the idea of your startup before FI, and how does that differ from how it looks like today?
Okay, so prior to getting into Founders, I would imagine myself as just a ball of energy with no direction. I knew I had a product. I knew I wanted to make a change. I knew I wanted to grow my startup, but I wanted to do so many things simultaneously. Whereas with getting into Founders, what you learn, one of the main things is that you learn to identify your target audience. The most important, so they break it down into like the simplest form. Your vision is up top, you're looking at everything, but you have to start from the bottom. So that's something that Founders does. It gives you direction and it tells you, this is where we see your product will best fit in. These are the next steps if you would get you success. And that's something that, I couldn't read online, or I couldn't Google or try to find on YouTube, only because over there, all the content you can't find online is just like, start your startup, don't wait for anything, you have the passion, you have the drive, go ahead and do it. But that's not the whole story here. Like, you can't just, dive in completely with all your energy and just figure it out. You have to build a schedule, you have to build timetables, you have to build timelines. There's so much that goes into the planning phase of a startup. And again, you're ready when you know you're ready. When we got into Founders Institute, we did not have any of these plans. But that's why this was a great place for us to understand how to build a rock solid foundation and then build upon the foundation. And that was one of the best things I can take back from my experience at Founders Institute.
Fantastic. Costa, the same question.
Absolutely. I was really resonating with what Chanakya was saying about, first of all, the focus about what you have to do. At the same time, on your question about, am I ready for it? To me, the answer is you will never be, in a way. You will never be ready, because the challenges around the startup or any initiative will also there transform. So if you are a rock solid company, obviously it's a different aspect. But the beauty as well of Founder Institute, that there are two paths into it. If I can just, there is just if you have the idea and then you want to somehow test your idea, which is a fantastic exercise, or if you are a bit more advanced into it and you wanna somehow grow. So you have these two possibilities, and you will be ready when you are ready. The founder of the company should be ready to take this journey, not the company, not the co-founders, not the founder. You should be ready for it. So on the question, are you ready, is a question that you should ask more about yourself than the idea itself, because you will have time and expertise as well shared from the Founder Institute that will allow you to understand if your idea is ready, but you have to be ready first.
That's a great story. I love that. Shahria, are you with us today?
I am Shahira.
Shahira, yes, Shahira.
A lot of people wrong in the first time around.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I know how startup life is incredibly busy, and I know you're on a different time zone, and you're joining us today. So thank you. So we missed your introduction, so let's cover that first and talk more about what you're doing with your startup.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Shahira. It's pronounced like Shakira with an H, and now you'll never forget. I am Moroccan Egyptian, half Moroccan, half Egyptian, born and raised in Morocco. Essentially, my background is mostly in advertising and branding. Started advertising agencies and moved on in-house and in-house companies. Now, I quit my job last year, 2020, around March 2020, which is perfect timing, right before COVID hit. And I decided to build a mindfulness and meditation app in Arabic. So essentially, it's a calm or a headspace tailored for the MENA region. The main differentiating aspects would be that we're delivering the content in various Arabic dialects so that it fits the user within the MENA region, as well as being culturally relevant. A good example of cultural relevance would be a 30-day Ramadan package so that it speaks to the user and it doesn't sound like we're reinventing the wheels of an already spiritual world, but more or less already just kind of fitting into the spirituality and the mindfulness space, if there is in the region. Why am I doing this? Essentially, growing up in Morocco, experienced firsthand, but also secondhand, the lack of mental health care that exists in the Arab region. One of my siblings has suffered with mental health issues throughout the past 15 years and still ongoing. So I've always had a very strong sensitivity for, or been sensible to mental health in general. Essentially, I, through my own journey, was going through a tough time about a few years ago and started meditating. Kind of an eat, pray, love story, minus the love, sadly, because I was in Bali and there was no Javier Badem, but just the food and the mindfulness. I really shifted my perspective in life and helped me massively. So I wanted to start to push that to my friends and family and loved ones, but realized that there was a huge gap of understanding and awareness of mindfulness practices in general within the MENA region, on top of the stigma and the taboo that already existed and still exists around mental wellness and mental health in general. So I did a little bit of research and essentially wanted to offer psychotherapy telehealth, affordable psychotherapy telehealth to the middle-class Arab to begin with, because psychotherapy or just therapy in general, psychiatry is extremely expensive. And with the taboos and the stigmas around it, nobody is really willing to have the courage to go into the psychiatry's office. So within the safety and the privacy of one's home, I wanted to offer something that was affordable. But when I deep dived into the research, and this is pre-COVID, I realized that it was a bit too early for the MENA region with such a strong concept. And so we decided to step back and introduce mindfulness and meditation as an easy daily kind of self-healing practice first, before we step into the telehealth aspect, which we still want to do. It's a vision that we have, but we'll start with an easy self-healing practice first, raising awareness with that, and then introducing a holistic approach with, telehealth in general. So that's the journey. As I said, I quit last year, March 2020. It was difficult times, obviously, with COVID, but given the sector with mindfulness and meditation, it was a good time, if I can say that, because people were starting to be introspective and were alone and starting to think about mental health in general in their own homes. So it wasn't so bad for us, but it was a tough time to, as a first-time founder myself, to step into this world. I joined Founder Institute in September, and it was, really helpful in various ways. But yeah, I guess I'll let you shoot with the questions in general. That's my journey up until now.
Wow, thank you. That was a fantastic introduction. You covered so many points there that I feel like there needs to be some more time in each one of those. I think you talked about this idea of having to pivot, trying new ideas and then having to retract. You talked about, the understanding the culture in the region and tailoring your services around that culture and respecting that culture, which is very powerful. And it's something that, we all have to do. It's like, whatever the market we're targeting, we do need to respect the culture and show how it can work in the real world. But also, you touched on another point, which is quitting your job, right? Now, and this is a question I would like to ask all three of you, because everyone has had a different experience of releasing that corporate ladder from themselves, right? Some people have made it voluntary. Some some of it's been involuntary. So I want to get, your feedback. And I think as Shahira, you started first talking about it. It sounds like it was a voluntary act. And tell us why you made that decision. What made it right for you?
I've always felt like deep inside was kind of an entrepreneur in general, but I've always been in the corporate life. I had been waiting for myself, I guess, to be ready or to have the right motivations to do it, in a sense where I only did it once I found a sense of purpose that really drove me to think it's the right time and the right space. I felt like I had completed, most of the learnings that I had in the corporate life, and found something that really motivated me to get out of bed every morning and have a purpose. Like I said, I felt like I found a purpose at the end of the day, which was highly motivating for me to do even more than I would have ever done in a corporate job. So yeah, I think for me the thing that drove me the most with my job was finding purpose. Someone else's.
Yeah, I think we just need to remind everyone to stay on mute, and but continue.
Yeah, that's it really. I think that what drove me the most is I had found a purpose. I had found a reason that really drove all my motivation. Had I been looking for an idea before quitting my job, I think it would have not worked out the right way. I'd only quit my job when I knew in my heart that this was what I meant to be doing at the moment right now.
Okay, Costa, over to you.
Yeah, it's I was carefully listening to what Shahira was saying, because somehow there are different components and different ingredients in the choice. If you find your purpose, or as well as I'm coming from the corporate world as well. I spent 15 years in the corporate world. I felt as well that I reached a certain level in the corporate, and I feel as well that the corporate is changing. I'm not sure if he's nowadays able, up to a certain point, to give employees and people that passion and that purpose within the organization. Now, obviously, I'm speaking on an average corporate, but I see a transition. I see a movement of people getting out, stepping out from the corporate world to doing their own stuff, because they feel that this is the purpose, or because they have some other component into it. You have to have as well a bit of, as Shahira was saying, something deep down there that is somehow telling you from day one that you want to try, you want to do something. And I'm sure that everybody in this call have that leader fire, because if you are curious about the startup world, you have that leader fire there. Now it's trying to understand how to put some more fire, or to put some more oxygen into it. One of the things to me as well, it was first the corporate, two, something inside, and third as well, somehow the family. Having 3 kids, I know I felt at a certain point the I don't know, that was my purpose, to leave a legacy. Whatever that means for them. Okay, so that doesn't mean that they have to take over and do something, but I felt this purpose, that I have to do something somehow for them, to give them a parachute in a way, if I'm trying my best at least to give that parachute in case they need.
And how was your wife during this process? Was she very supportive? I know this is kind of going into a more personal aspect, but I think it's also very important for the audience to understand.
Yeah, sure. You need to have some serious conversation, that's for sure.
Yeah.
With your partner in general, because as I said, the startup is getting into your personal life, but anything, but the startup, especially when you are starting up, is getting in your personal life. So you should have a partner, you should have a conversation. You should try to understand if your partner is supportive. Now, how much is supportive? It's obviously a scale of gray, okay? But I felt supported by my wife.
Yeah.
It was a decision that somehow how can I say, I put forward. I was
Yeah.
really convinced to take this decision. So on the other side as well, your partner should see that willingness of, pushing forward this idea. If you are not very convinced, obviously this is going to create a bit of tension and friction where you are. But if you are convinced and you move forward, I feel lucky to obviously to be supported by my wife, but you should be as well clear with yourself if you want to take that at the end of the day is going to have an impact in your life. So you should be clear with yourself if you want to take this responsibility for the impact, and as a responsibility, as the ability to respond to what is going to change. This is my I would say my recommendation. Have a serious conversation and trying to understand if you want to take this responsibility for the impact this is going to have.
Shanakia,
Yeah,
about
no,
you?
just to add to that, one thing is that Costa has always been the hardest worker in the room since I've known him. So I'm pretty sure he'll continue to be the hardest worker in the room. But for me, the startup bug bit me on very early on when I was in university. I had the opportunity to establish a student-led accelerator in my campus, and I've graduated about 6 years ago, and the accelerator is still running, so which is great. But right after completing university, I went into the corporate life, 6 years almost in investment banking. And then I came back down to Dubai, and this was right when the pandemic was just about to hit. So I tried remote working, but then I realized that, this was the only opportunity I had to cut my ties with the corporate world and actually try to experience something and build something of my own. And I won't say that the calling came, it was not like a calling or something, but it was more so like I saw that currently where I am in life, this is the best decision I can take for myself because I was able to take the risk without having a high, without having much risk on the other hand. So I went deep dived into the startup world. I'd learned a lot in my previous experience, and continuing on that, I have been able to learn a lot. One thing, especially when you're, going out and trying to establish a company or building something of your own, you have to realize that you'll have to wear multiple hats simultaneously. So again, if someone gave me numbers and even if they didn't make any sense to them, it would make sense to me. But if someone told me something about marketing or someone told me something about building a product, I was pretty clueless. So these were a lot of things that I had to learn early on and make some mistakes and avoid some mistakes as well. And these are things that you have to be able to ready to commit to, especially if you've been comfortable in a 9 to 5 job. This will be different. Like getting into a startup life is different. Now you're all of a sudden receiving emails in the middle of the night, and people expect a response because your main job is to ensure that you keep your customers and you keep your clients growing. And by providing them that kind of service where they realize that you're always there for them is something that you can provide early on right now, compared to a larger company which has a strict 9 to 5 and they cannot provide those kinds of services. So being able to commit fully, and especially if you do have a spouse or a partner, having the conversation with your significant other is definitely so important, because all of a sudden you're not in a 9 to 5 job. You are spending extra hours on a startup. You are sleeping later, waking up earlier, ensuring you have everything on track, ensuring you can lock down a customer, ensuring that your revenues are in track, your finances are in track, because especially when you grow a team, you're now responsible not only for yourself, but also your team. So you have to be able to put yourself in a position where you can take on that responsibility and not only take it on, but also thrive. So those are a few things that I'd like to let every potential founder that's coming into the room, take into consideration.
Thank you very much. These were great stories, by the way. I want to move on to the FI program. I want to ask you two questions to all three of you. they're both related. I want to know, what did you benefit the most from the FI program? And also, what was unexpected that you benefited from the program that you didn't expect, of course? So let's start with Costa.
I see, yeah, one word first, and then I will put a bit more color onto it. I will say storytelling, the first thing that came to my mind. What I mean by that is, you have something clear in your head, and that's it. Nobody understands. So you try thousands of times to speak out there, especially at the beginning when you have to put context on your idea. Sometimes it happens, sometimes not. But this is what I benefited. That it's clear for you. Now out there, the world doesn't understand you most of the time, like 80% of the time. At the beginning, they will not understand what you are proposing. And even if you believe that's a revolutionary, great idea, it's not necessarily the case. So with the storytelling is the ability to explain your vision, even if I don't like much the word vision, but it's commonly understood, to explain your vision to everybody, anybody out there, because sometimes the people that you are with whom you are discussing your idea are not necessarily coming from your industry, or you're not speaking your language, or you're not speaking your problem and your solution. So most of the time when you see people out there with a face like, I have no idea what you're talking about, maybe it's right, and this is what happened to me. Let's say what helped me is to put less words into the idea, because sometimes we want to say everything and we just say too many things. So putting less on your idea, just giving the right context, trying to identify who's the people out there that is speaking with you, so you can somehow meet the people where they are. So storytelling, I would say, is the things that I learned the most, because you have an opportunity every week to present your pitch, your idea, to a variety of people with different backgrounds. So that's a really good exercise to see if the people are following you, and if you are convincing the people with your vision and with your execution, with your operation on the vision. So that's I would say what I personally like the most. I'm not there yet, but it is a journey of awareness. Okay, so you understand, and then obviously you take your direction. You use your own words and guidelines, but at least you know that when you speak from the other side, they are understanding you, because this is not it's not a given. And most of the time we go in a reactive mode. So there is a feedback, or there is something out there, and then somehow you feel that you have to protect your idea, and you start saying again too many things. But if from the other side they do not understand, your idea can be as good as you want, you're not gonna get it out there. So that's I would say this is what I get it. If this is the first point. The second one was the unexpected.
Yeah.
So on the unexpected part, I would say I'm not sure if there was something that it was really unexpected, but at the same time, I will refer again to what I was saying before. What is clear, this was really I would not say a transformation, but it was really, waking up. That was unexpected. It's like you say the same things over and over again, and from the other side, it seems like nobody is understanding you. So that was like, what is happening here? So that was unexpected, and it was, a moment of growth, because then you have to step back. Relax in a way, and put the things forward in a different way.
Absolutely. But on that note about storytelling, you're saying that you haven't perfected it yet. And the truth is that you'll never perfect it because your journey isn't complete, right?
Right.
And so your story is always evolving. And that's the beautiful part about it, is that you don't have to be worried about completing it. It's always evolving.
Absolutely.
So Shahira, over to you.
Yes. So what was most useful for me in Founder Institute are two things. One was the building a community. So I'm obviously not based in the MENA region. I'm based in the UK. I'm creating a product that is essentially targeting the MENA region. And I wanted to, I already came in, which I think is important, into Founder Institute with an idea of why I wanted to join Founder Institute, which I think is essential. I think you need to define why you're joining it and what is the purpose of it, what your goal is. My goal was to build a community and a network of people, and two, to help me understand and validate whether I was taking the right track of the business model, of the marketing strategy, the go-to-market, etc. And once I had defined that those were the two reasons, it really helped me understand whether I wanted to join Founder Institute or not. And so my goal number one was to build a community, and that was really immensely helpful. I built a network of people, not only of the cohort, but also of the advisors that Founder Institute had presented to us. And there was a large scale of advisors within, all different type of backgrounds, whether it was finance to help us with the business model, or whether it was tech, which is obviously not my forte at all. So that was super helpful. I created community, even when it came to, testing out a session or two on a landing page. I had a community of the cohort who was there to help me with feedback or whatnot, connecting to their universities or, extended platforms, as well as the advisors, which was essential. One of the advisors that was presented to us from the Founder Institute cohort is now part of my advisory board. So that was extremely helpful. And then the second aspect was, given that I was the first time founder, I didn't really know if I was taking the right track with, for example, the amount of money to spend on a tech product at the MVP level, or if my go-to-market was, realistic or not. So running it by the different advisors that came throughout the program over time, over the weeks over weeks, it was really helpful to me, or for me, to run it by them. So I would pick the marketing specialist and go up to her and say, what do you think about my go-to-market? Or if it was someone who's, an advisor within the financial aspect, I would run my business model with them and ask them to poke holes in it and see if I was, taking it in the right direction. Essentially, a good example is to say, when I had built my business model, or at least the capex or the outgoings of my spend from the fundraise that I wanted, I realized I was spending 3 times as much than I should have for the MVP. So that was really helpful for me to speak to people who are experts and say, you really don't need to spend this much money. All you need to be focusing on is whether your content is something that people want to listen to or not. Don't spend on tech. Use a landing page, for example, and spend the rest of the money within your content creators or whatnot. So that was essentially the most helpful for me at that stage.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, definitely adding to what you said is that another thing that really assisted me was just structure. Again, all of us don't have all skills required to build a startup. And that's where Founders Institute really helps you build a really strong foundation, whether it's marketing, go-to-market, strategizing, financing, all these key pillars of what it takes to execute a startup. And these are things that you will learn and learn fast throughout the Founders Institute program, because these are the things that will then help you go raise money, attract more customers, and grow your business. So these were some of the things that I didn't know, especially when how to recognize your ideal customer, or if you're looking for an investor, what sort of input do they provide into your startup? You just don't want to go to the first person throwing money at you, because that might not be best for your startup. So taking all these things into consideration and then analyzing what's available and then how to execute and launch your product. These are key skills that I've gained from Founders Institute. Another thing is that definitely the advisors, the advisors are always there, and it's on you to take advantage of them. They're willing to sit down and have office hours with you multiple times a week, and the ability to have access to these people who are at the peak of their careers, who have all these experience, who have built startups that could be part of your network, is so crucial and so important, especially if I see people over here from Africa, from Canada, from France. So like, just having access to these mentors is so crucial to building that network that can then unlock more doors for you in the future, was something instrumental in building our product out. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think from from my personal story, talking about since when I joined Founder Institute, which is now about 4 months ago, I'm currently running the GCC and Silicon Valley program for that cohort. And what I've seen is there's multiple layers going on here. One is the educational layer. And that educational layer is the one that focuses on all the questions that need to be asked, right? And a lot of the time is some of these founders, they don't ask those questions. They don't get prompted with these questions when they speak to their circle or their advisors. And that's where the biggest concern is, because they get validation, and sometimes it's false validation. And they're going down a path where they believe they're going perfectly in the right direction until a point where, they hit a brick wall eventually, and they're thinking to themselves, what am I doing wrong? And it's such a drain in the energy that they, in terms of being involved in the right community, asking the right questions. And that's what the Founder Institute has been known to be very useful in that aspect. But on top of that, you're right, as Shahira mentioned, it's this idea of opportunities, right? The fact that you have mentors, advisors, and investor, professionals, they are all there with decades of experience, and they have like the knowledge of all the verticals you can imagine in all the industries, and through that you're creating all sorts of relationships, and you're generating that kind of support, that genuine support, which is fantastic. So I really love the story about how Shahira got her own advisor from the Founder Institute. It's fascinating. So thank you very much for those. Now, my next question really is, more for the audience. Now, if you were to give one piece of advice, the most magic piece of advice that you would give to the audience right now, what would it be? And I want to ask this question first to Chanakia.
Yeah, really good question. One of the most important advices I'd give you is that don't fall in love with your idea, fall in love with your ability to execute and build a startup, because your idea will keep evolving. We came into Founders Institute with product A, and by the time we graduated, we had to pivot, and because we thought we understood the market. But once you speak to so many experts who've been in the market for so long and have so much experience, you might have the right product, but you might have to change a few things and pivot a little bit. So as a founder, I know everybody's like, my idea is the best, I have the greatest idea and it will work. That's not always true. Like, ideas can be great and they can be really successful, but, fall in love with your ability to execute and you will build a great startup.
All right, over to Shahira now.
Yeah, my advice would be, quitting your job is a big step. It really is a big step. I think we undermine and underestimate the amount of courage that it takes. But if you have if you're obsessed with the problem, I wouldn't say obsessed. I think obsessed is not a healthy behavior, but almost obsessed with solving the problem that you're solving, then go for it. I wouldn't quit your job. I wouldn't quit the job unless you almost feel an obsession to really solve the problem that you want to step into. And if you're not solving a problem, then don't quit your job, because there are going to be hard times, ups and downs, and you have to be willing to sit in a very risky place where you could not be paid or have a revenue for a year or two until your company really kicks off and you're actually really able to close the round and prioritize your product before you prioritize yourself. So yeah, I guess that's my idea. It sounds a bit scary, but it's not that scary. My advice is find a solution that really resonates with you, and that is a problem that you sat with first of all, and that you really want to solve for the rest of the world.
Fantastic. Costa?
Yeah, I want to do a copy paste of something that I recently saw on a video about. It was a similar question about what's your recommendation. And the speaker was a really successful entrepreneur. So the first thing, she thought a bit and she said, "Don't do it," because the amount of things that comes to you, it's a really it's beautiful. Okay, but going back, there should be this sense of overcoming these "don't do it." Okay, so there should be, Shada said, obsession, passion, obsession, something in the middle about it. There should be this willingness to take courage, to take risk, to move forward, to quit your job. So it's this explosion of things that happen into your life. So my recommendation would be, again, see the idea as something abstract. Don't get attached to it, because this is a bit also repeating what Chanakya said. Don't be attached to it. It's something that will move, will change, will evolve throughout the time, and it's more about what you will do to execute that idea. So this is the first recommendation. Don't get personal with the idea, as well as be patient. Be really, really patient, because you will see different things coming to you, different feedback. Somehow it's going to be really ugly, somehow it's going to be really good. So you're going to have this roller coaster of emotions. So be really, really patient, and maybe use the Shaira app to help to meditate and to somehow recenter and refocus.
Absolutely. So one of the things I would say here to both Chanakya and Costa, you both mentioned about not being attached to your idea. And this ultimately comes down to ego, right? When you have such belief, you're going to steamroll anyone that comes in your way, giving you negative feedback, saying this, you need to do this, you need to do that to your pitch. And it really takes away the quality of the program. It really does take away the experience of what this Founder Institute program provides. Now, I've come across founders that say to me, I know what I'm doing. I've done so many businesses. I've got investment, funding for my current startup. And I was like, that's great. I mean, where did you get it from? And they say, oh, I got it from my friends and family. I was like, okay, that's friends and family and fools. Okay, that's great. They believe in you, but that doesn't necessarily mean they believe in your idea, right? And that's the question that needs to be answered. And that needs to be answered by the professionals, those that have the expertise. And Shahira mentioned again about this idea of quitting the job. I'm trying to remember the person who mentioned this to me. They said, quitting a job to focus on entrepreneurship is like falling in love. Like once you know, it's going to happen, right? And I don't know if any of you have fallen in love, but it's one of those things that you don't have to be fixated on, do I need to quit my job now? Do I need to quit my job now? It's when that moment comes, you will know when to quit your job. So just keep focusing on being the 10% entrepreneur, the 20% entrepreneur that you are right now, even though you're working in the corporate world, get to that point where you've convinced yourself. And when you convince yourself, you convinced everyone else around you. So it's really powerful. So I like what you guys are saying. All right, so that's all my questions, and I